Okay, good evening and welcome to all of you. We're here to celebrate and maybe to commiserate a little bit because our brother Fola Kudembu, who we all know, who has been executive chairman of the Chamber, the African Caribbean Chamber of Commerce and Enterprise, of which I'm part. I'm Joel O'Loughlin, and I'm the regional director for the Caribbean. But it's great to see all of you come here, you know, to say a kind of adieu, not necessarily farewell to Fola, but also to introduce the board of Fountain, and that is Fola's next orientation. He will be the chief exec of Fountain Initiative for Social Development. And we're going to have a number of the board members who are here, so welcome to all of you, to just introduce what the new orientation for Fola will be. It offers an opportunity for all of us in his network to connect with the work that they're doing in Fountain, inspirational work around transforming the landscape in Nigeria, and work that I hope will have international linkages here with London and elsewhere with the Chamber. So we're very pleased to have all of you come. I guess it's a sign of how much respect that you all have for Fola and the work that he's done and the connections that he's made over time that you're here. So first of all, let me thank you all for showing, you know, that gratitude to him. We're going to have a number of speakers, but we will also have Fola talk to us in a little while. Before I move on to our first speaker, let me reassure you that the Chamber is still very much alive and we are reorganizing ourselves. As you will know, that the base for the Chamber has been Bristol and London. Fola holding the fort in Bristol, but now that torch will pass to myself and Ade. Ade, if you could just make yourself known. Ade Jai, our London chairman. So we will be picking up the torch and continue to do the work that we're doing. The Chamber is very much still alive, and we will be shortly telling you exactly all of the things that we're going to do next. Okay, without further ado, because you have been waiting for some time, let me introduce one of the board of directors of Fountain Initiative for Social Development. A warm welcome for Dr. Patrick Tolani.
Thank you. My job is very simple, and it is to welcome you. So I take this opportunity on behalf of the chair of the board, Pastor Nomfi Odukoya, to welcome all of you to this evening of networking and to probably celebrate our win that we're able to get somebody in the quality of Fola to be the first chief executive and the pioneering director of the Fountain Initiative for Social Development. There are other speakers that will be speaking, so my job is not to detain you. But I thought it's going to be very useful to set the tune about the country that has brought us here today. And that country is called Nigeria. Perhaps what you hear most now is the insecurity in the country, in the nature of what is called Boko Haram. But that is not all about Nigeria. There are so many other positive things about Nigeria. And to situate what I'm going to talk about, I'll give you a little bit of statistics. The country, round about the 70s and the 80s, was growing at almost 0 or -%, whilst the population growth was at that time about 3%. Today, the economy of Nigeria is growing at the rate of about 6 or 7%, but the population growth is still growing at the rate of 2.6%. Now, as an economist, you might just think that is great, that is positive, that's wonderful. But there are so many vulnerabilities within the system that makes the picture less cheerful. We have corruption, we have a lot of leakages, and the economy is dependent mainly on one item. Now, how do we do a turnaround? My proposition is very simple. We must continue with the growth. But the 6 or 7% growth that I've mentioned earlier is not an inclusive growth. And because it is not an inclusive growth, we have so many people that are left behind. And if a lot of people are not participating in the economic life of a nation, what you have to have is poverty and lack of opportunity. And so the proposition is that we need an economic transformation for Nigeria. And indeed, we need vehicles to birth such economic transformation. That is where Fountain Initiative for Social Development has come in. Most of what you're going to hear tonight will be situated within that premise. And so please, having bored you with all the statistics, I believe that other speakers will go into more detail to tell you more about what the organization is about. That's not my job. My job is to welcome you and to tell you that you need to have a good evening. Please network with us. Now, there is one thing that is very positive that I'm going to tell you. Most of the board members are members of the church, but I'm not a member of that church. I'm a pastor, and I'm a pastor with the Redeemed Christian Church of God, but I'm a member of the board. What does that say? This organization wants everybody. So, whatever role you can play, just join me. And let's make a change. Let's make a difference in a place where whatever you do has got great impact. Thank you very much. Please enjoy the evening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tolani. It's often something that I say when I get onto platforms because, you know, we deal a lot with businessmen. Yeah, and there is this notion that business is controlled only by men. And my mother used to say, well, if you want talk, then get the men to talk. But if you want action, it is a woman who will deliver on that action. So I'm very pleased to have the chairwoman of Fountain, Dr. Nomti Odukoya, if you could join us, and a big warm welcome to her.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good evening. I'm sorry for the hesitation. I think there's a slight change in the program. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the London launch of the Fountain Initiative for Social Development, FISD. As we would hear later from our founder and visionary, Pastor Taiwo Odukoya, FISD is an independent and autonomous not-for-profit which aims to work with faith-based values, professionalism, and accountability. Some of you may already know what FISD is about through the concept paper, but to ensure that we all are on the same page, FISD is a strategic vehicle that aims to institutionalize decades of the work of the Fountain of Life Church in Nigeria. We are not just emotionally giving, we have now structured this into 3 areas: 1, education, vocational training, career and entrepreneurship development. With high unemployment and restiveness amongst youths in our beloved country, Nigeria, FISD will dedicate a significant portion of its interventions to working with young people. Later on, we're going to see a video which would show how the church has built a good track record in communities it has worked in. This will be an important launch pad for FISD, but we hope to expand our work and intervene in communities across Nigeria. Given the size of the country, you will agree that we cannot achieve these goals alone. Therefore, we need partners. Fountain believes in putting its money where its mouth is. Therefore, the church has approved an annual grant for 3 years to enable the FISD commence on a solid footing, but we also aim to engage partners who would like to intervene in Nigeria, either through the provision of expertise, skills, or resources. I was expecting a round of applause for the church. Thank you. We need your time, your interest, your ideas, and most importantly, your support. We know that many times a good referral is better than money, and we hope that you would see FISD as a credible, accountable organization to refer to your networks. This is the aim of today's launch in London. We are hoping that after tonight, the FISD International Network of Supporters would have been established. As chairman of the pioneering board, I am pleased to see the turnout and believe that this is a good foundation for future collaborations. Let me take a moment to acknowledge the presence of my other colleagues on the board present at the event. If they could please just step forward. We have Mrs. Tinu Olashore, Mrs. Shirley Okaredia, Ms. Thelma Ekio, Mr. Benga Onobanjo, Dr. Patrick Folani in our midst. Thank you very much. From our strong attendance, you can see that this is an important event for FISD. Finally, on behalf of the board, I'd like to formally, publicly welcome Mr. Fola Kudembu for our pioneering executive director to FISD. Thank you very much, Mr. Fola. We believe that with Fola at the helm, working with an accomplished board, we will achieve the objectives of FISD. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation. I look forward to interacting with everyone as the evening progresses. Do have a lovely evening.
Thank you. And our next speaker is the founder of FISD, Dr. Taiwo Odukoya. I'm going to ask him to come to the stage. He's going to talk about charting a new vision for not only FISD, but for Nigeria. Dr. Odukoya.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and wonderful guests, good evening. And I was standing there, and Clive Booth walked up to me and asked a question. Yes, sir. He said, why did you choose Lagos? For me, it was, why are you doing what you're doing? Where you're doing it? So basically, this is what I'll just be talking about in the next few minutes. You see, the church globally has a strong history and proven track record of advancing social justice, defending human rights, promoting charity, and providing quality health care and education. Here in the UK and across Europe, there are so many examples of the leading role the church has played in social development. The leadership role in advancing social change is still very relevant in our 21st century world as we face more direct and urgent challenges, such as terrorism, insecurity, endemic poverty, and unequal distribution of resources. As governments across the world, at least today, realize that they are unable to respond to all of these challenges alone, the church once again has to visibly take up its responsibility as a vehicle for social change and development. The Fountain of Life Church was established more than 20 years ago on this very premise. We have a firm conviction that our role in society is to positively impact our immediate communities. As a church, we have been doing this for over 2 decades. Through a number of social programs, notably career development, vocational school, educational support program, and entrepreneurial development. The church also has a clinic that provides subsidized as well as free health care services. And we have a large firm that in the long term will contribute toward promoting food security in Nigeria. As you're aware, the Fountain of Life Church is based in Lagos, Nigeria, a country with vast potential, extensive human and natural resources, but also numerous socio-economic problems, like Dr. Tolani had earlier mentioned. Most topical, of course, is the challenges posed by the Boko Haram. And these have led many commentators in the West to predict doom and woes for Nigeria. But I can confirm to you today that Nigeria remains a great country with great future. This is not rhetoric. It's what I believe. It's what I've done for the past 20 years. In fact, it was the way I was raised up. As a church, we see this potential daily in the communities we work, where ordinary people achieve extraordinary feats with minimal resources. So our role is to design programs that will change the status quo in these communities and provide opportunities for people to improve their lives. And we have been doing this through the programs that I mentioned earlier. So over the years, it has become evident to us that the demand for these programs exceeds supply, and that we need to develop a framework for partnering with like-minded institutions locally and internationally in order to expand our services to meet more of these needs. This realization was the impetus for establishing FISD as an independent, autonomous, not-for-profit that will facilitate collaborations for change in the key areas of education, vocational training, entrepreneurial and career development. We are delighted that this important launch of FISD is taking place in London. Even before the formal launch in Nigeria, this is very, very symbolic for us. Our vision for change is to operate locally in Nigeria, but continue to think globally, as the issues we are dealing with in Nigeria are not unique to Nigeria. We believe that partnerships with those of you in this room and many like you over the years will serve as an important conduit for realizing these changes. I am pleased that this vision has become a reality through the appointment of our pioneering board, which you just met, and our executive director, very competent and very able. I am confident that this team of competent and experienced people will implement the vision successfully. I would like to end by extending my sincere appreciation to all those who were involved in organizing this evening, and in particular for our guests, very busy, but still making time to attend. Thank you very much. Have a very enjoyable evening.
Excellent. Before the next speaker, you are in the Unison building, I think you know that. One of the reasons that we are here is that Unison has an executive branch called MIP, Managers in Partnership, that deals with the senior executives in the public sector, and particularly in the NHS. So I have to thank them for allowing us into this building today. We are actually always breaking ground. I think we're the first organization that's been allowed to use this space. So again, the Chamber has another first. Dr. Odukoya spoke about some of the challenges that we have in ensuring that Africa is positive in society and Africa has a positive image. Our next speaker, Clive Booth, is going to address the impact of the media on creating that positive media and image of Africa. He has worked as a Financial Times journalist, and I think he's currently the chief executive of PR Works. Can we give him a big round of applause?
Well, good evening, everybody. And just in case you're wondering what a white boy is doing stood here, I grew up in Nigeria. No, you have to thank my father for that, not me. I was just a little one. Okay, I've lived in Kano, Lagos, Enugu, Ibadan, Jos, Zaria, Maiduguri. Yeah, so ha-ha, everybody. Just in case you're judging a book by its color, okay. I was born in London. I was conceived in London, according to my mother, but I was born in Yorkshire in England, and then we lived in Nigeria for 17 years. So some 17 years after that, I was delighted when an opportunity came for me to do some work in Nigeria, and fast forward another 5 years, and my paths crossed with Foller's. I think we had a conversation along the lines of, as a former journalist at the Financial Times and as a PR consultant of 20 years, I've been frustrated for a very long time that Nigeria's story has not been properly told. And to the extent of mortgaging my house and buying a marketing company in Lagos, I was prepared to actually say to the family, right, it's time that we put my vision, if you like, into operation. Unfortunately for me, Foller then got a better job. So well done, Fountain. Thank you very much for that. However, we may yet do some work together. Anyway, I thought one of the things, I'm strictly against the clock. I now have got only 6.5 minutes left, so I'll keep quick. I only have 1,000 words to say, by the way, in case those of you are timing this presentation. Goodness knows we're going to need as much time as we can, because when Foller gets going, he never goes off. He just keeps going. So be very careful when he starts and holds this microphone. Anyway, I did come with some prepared words, and I'd like just to give you most of them, if I may. And I think the issue for me about West Africa is the real risk of West Africa is not taking an interest, but if you don't take an interest, you'll miss the boat. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we face here in Europe. Clever investors haven't been blind to the political and the regulatory uncertainty that exists in many African countries. But despite the optimism that now prevails about West Africa's future, the risks associated with war, with terrorism, with epidemics, and climate change do still, unfortunately, set the media's agenda. And as far as journalists are concerned, and those journalists who've not visited the continent haven't recognized how big it is, or the diversity within the different countries. So, for example, as you well know, Lagos is no more like Addis Ababa than London is like Paris. And yet, the majority of people like you didn't realize that I have an understanding of Nigeria. You imagine if you're a person that's never actually stepped foot south of Paris, and all your perceptions about Nigeria particularly are coloured either by the Super Eagles, either by Boko Haram, or about oil corruption. Now, one of the things I'm hoping that we can change tonight between all of us here is that we need to start telling some stories that Nigeria is a good deal more than that. But if we don't do the telling, the journalists aren't going to come and do the listening. We actually do have to go on the offensive and start telling that story for ourselves. Didn't expect to get a round of applause for that. I'm okay, right, good. Okay, it's not just West Africa's economic potential that's attracting those of us here in London, but it's its cultural history, the tourism opportunities, and how to harness the educational capacity of millions of eager, clever, hard-working, keen children and teenagers. West Africa's development potential has been attributed to a number of factors, whether it be a stable political environment, or the contribution of the African diaspora, or the role of China in buying Africa's abundant physical resources, or perhaps the advantage of mobile telephony, which of course, as you all know, has swept through and made such a commercial benefit. I think, frankly, the difference between where you are when you started the foundation and where we are in 2014 is the emergent middle class of Nigeria. Now, that emergent middle class has to club together, and using the population of Nigeria's 160 million or so souls, really demonstrate that it has experience and expertise and intelligence and creativity and depth. And if you don't do it now, other countries will do it for you. But one thing I'm absolutely certain is we mustn't wait another 20 years and let the three issues that dragged Nigeria down still be the same prevailing story in another 20 years. So it has to start somewhere. Why shouldn't it start at Fountain? Okay. Now, there is one thing I think that will change the perception of the European public as we go forward, and that's essentially the focus on professionals. Professionals not so much in government, but professionals like lawyers and accountants and investors who can see from themselves that the commercial opportunities of Nigeria are too good to ignore. And I think one of the things that has been ignored is not just Nigeria's vast size, but the opportunity that the population generates and can generate for those of us who are involved professionally, in my case, in legal services, but also in education and also in tourism. Did you know, for instance, that in the UK, actually, show of hands, how many newspapers do you believe England has? If you think it has 10 newspapers or 20 newspapers, put your hands up. This is national newspapers. If you think, the answer's 9, by the way, you were all wrong. If you think Nigeria has 20 newspapers or 30 newspapers, national newspapers, put your hands up. Okay. If you think Nigeria has between 40 and 60 national newspapers, put your hands up. Actually, I gave the answer earlier on to these guys over here. They're cheating. Nigeria has got 47 national newspapers. And whilst you might think that's not of interest, it is when you compare that to the UK. There's an enormous appetite in Nigeria for news. There's an awful lot of appetite in the UK as well for news. But one of the things that the countries haven't yet aligned is the fact that the news generating that's going on in Nigeria doesn't translate to what's going on here in Europe. And the reason that it doesn't go on here in Europe is because, frankly, I don't know what the Nigerian middle-class diaspora is doing about telling its colleagues what a fantastic place Nigeria is. So actually, if you're not going to do the storytelling, as I say again, the newspapers won't know where to go with the stories we've got. So, and I've been given the thumbs down. I must stop. Okay. One more thing I wanted just to share with you, and it was this. It's a mistake to think that you must go through government if you want to get work done in Nigeria. Professional advisors and people on the ground are best placed to assist you in the best way to reduce the risk of dealing and doing business in Nigeria. Good analysis and best practice provided by trusted global professionally trained men and women now exist all across Nigeria to satisfy the due diligence of even the most skeptical European. proving that West Africa, and Nigeria in particular, is open and ready for business. I think the future is really exciting. Thank you very much for listening.
Great messages. And just in case you think the chamber's up and moved to Nigeria, in the audience we have Zambia, don't we? We have Ghana, we have Uganda. So we have the whole African diaspora here, at least a good cross-section. And we welcome you and I hope that our vision of Pan-Africanism and thinking about how we can intertrade between our countries, never mind intertrading with Europe and others, we need to first of all look to ourselves and see how we can build an Africa which is sustainable in its development. We are on our way, and I think Clive has pointed to that, and it's important that we have a good impact upon the media and tell our stories.